Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Bill DeFilippo, joined today by my co-host, Matt Filipovitz. Matt, what's going on?
Bill, I don't live too far from DePaul University's campus, and it was their graduation weekend last night or this weekend or whatever. So, first of all, if you're a DePaul student and you listen to this Penn State podcast, congratulations. But somebody across the alley from me threw down with a graduation party, which had a trap remix of Funky Town. And I was just like sitting outside. I was watching the World Cup and the NBA Finals on my TV that I have outside. And I have been thinking nonstop about how old I have gotten in that I was hearing those guys throw down, having a great time. And I was thinking to myself, good for them. I'm so glad I'm over here instead. So I'm starting to feel like I'm really turning the corner in my maturity. And that made me realize it last night.
Yeah, normally it's your lower back that lets you know that's going to happen. But I do just want to go off of something that you just mentioned. But you saying congratulations to any DePaul graduate who is listening to this podcast. I also want to say congratulations, but I also have a second thing, which is if you are a DePaul graduate listening to this podcast, could you let us know, like, why are you doing that? I'm very appreciative of you doing that, but why are you listening to a Penn State football podcast? It would be at least the people who attended Villanova and listened to Penn State and like Penn State football, at least there's like some understanding that I have of that. But DePaul would be an interesting one. Although I do suppose that who would it be? I guess Notre Dame. Would Notre Dame be like the de facto football team?
Notre Dame, yeah, probably with the Catholic tie-in. I would imagine that would probably be the number one. Illinois, potentially Northwestern. I mean, there's options all around the beautiful Chicagoland area. But yeah, Bill, I'm excited to be here talking about Penn State's wide receiver room, which has been a nightmare, I think, to say the least, the last couple of years. Man, it feels good to have some new blood in this room finally. It feels really good.
I'm very glad that we're starting there, Matt. Of course, if you're tuning in, if you know what we're going to be doing. If this is your first time tuning in to one of our preview episodes, what we do is we go position by position on Penn State on the offensive and defensive sides of the football and preview them ahead of this upcoming season. As the way the podcast goes, we're going to break down the starters, the depth guys. We're going to rank them among Penn State's units on that side of the football. We're going to play a little bit of who we played for and then get out of here. But Matt hit the nail on the head of what is the most interesting thing with Penn State's wide receiver room. To me, it has nothing to do with the guys there. It has nothing to do with the wide receiver coach. It is this position more than any other, Matt. I think in moving on from James Franklin and hiring literally anybody else other than like a triple option coach, there is going to be optimism, some level of optimism. Every Penn State fan is going to have the I need to see it before anything else approach. I have that too, completely understandable. But there's going to be optimism that it's going to be different for no reason other than there is a new guy coaching the football program. And that means just like by definition, things are going to change at the wide receiver room. Maybe they get worse. I do not think there is a single person on earth who is going to say, I think things are going to get worse for Penn State's wide receiver room under Matt Campbell.
I mean, you do make the point that, the biggest thing being that there's a changing of the guard. But not only is there just like a changing of the guard fundamentally, there also is a changing of the guard in the sense that Matt Campbell has made it very clear over the last decade he's been a head coach that there's a certain kind of receiver he wants to have in his program and leading that wide receiver room. I never really, and Bill, you can maybe check me if I'm wrong, I never really felt like Franklin or any of the, myriad of wide receiver coaches that have come through this program over the last 12 years had a set, this is what we're looking for out of receivers. This is the kind of body type we want. This is how we want them to play. Like you think about the kind of receivers Penn State had that were in a wide receiver one types. Jahan Dotson played very differently from a guy like KJ Hamler, who played differently from a Chris Godwin, who played differently from Mitchell Tinsley. All of those guys you had guys who were as short as like 5'9" for KJ, maybe generously, to a guy like Jawan Johnson, who was like 6'4", 6'5". And Matt Campbell, on the other hand, seems to be really into, I want big guys who can high point the football. I want guys who are 6'1", 6'2". Not saying they won't take, a shorter guy than that, which I think is, we'll talk about Koby Howard in a little bit here. But I like the fact that I feel like I know there's a plan for what they want these wide receivers to do in the offense, and not trying to shoehorn away for all these different kind of receivers to give them anything. You think that's probably a fair way to put this situation we find ourselves in?
So I think in order to understand Penn State's wide receiver room, and why the change is just going to feel really different, there's a quote that I think we need to go back to, and it's a quote that that I think Penn State fans, maybe they missed it, maybe they saw it and they just kind of moved on from it. But it was actually a quote from Trey Wallace. Trey Wallace, of course, really, really good football player. Guy who did a lot of good stuff for Penn State, a guy who ended up transferring for his final year to Ole Miss. And Trey gave a quote to the website OM Spirit. It is Ole Miss's On 3 site. And the quote was, really, it's always hard, especially leaving a great team like Penn State. But I wanted to take a chance on myself this last year and just really find a passing offense, that passing being their number one focus. Really just seeing how their receiver room has just thrived over the years and how their offense is really like a pass-focused offense is something I could see myself being a part of. And something that became really obvious, especially towards the end of the James Franklin era, was that the role of the wide receivers in Penn State's offense was not necessarily, you need to be able to go down the field. You need to be able to make plays. You need to be able to catch the football. Penn State's wide receivers were part of an offense that was built around a big physical offensive line, that was built around a running game, and was built around, as those things get established, we will then make the passing offense something that you have to reckon with. And what I think is that, not saying that Matt Campbell and Taylor Mauser are going to come in and going to want to, air raid it up. But what I will say, Penn State's top leading wide receiver in 2024 was Trey Wallace, 46 receptions, 720 yards. Penn State's top receiver in 2023 was Keandre Lambert-Smith, 53 receptions, 673 yards. Penn State's top receiver in 2022 was Parker Washington, by yards, 611, by receptions, Mitchell Tinsley with 51. Penn State's wide receivers over the last couple of years were so dependent on the running game and complementing the running game and everything kind of working in harmony with one another that I almost feel like they got lost in the sauce. And I don't think that's, and even though the main guys the passing offense are going to be built around didn't exactly put up huge numbers last year in Brett Eskilson and Chase Soule at Iowa State, I don't think Penn State's receivers are going to be this group of guys who you need to be able to, we want you to run block. We want you to be able to, we want the smoke and mirrors. I think there's going to be more of an emphasis in this offense on Penn State's receivers being guys who are like, go and make plays. You have to do that other stuff, but we trust your ability to make plays, and we are going to give you the opportunity to do that, separate from, okay, so we've carefully crafted our offense that we now are able to take a play action shot. There's a cover one defense. So we are going to be able to do a play action shot to Amari Evans because we get that spit. It's like, no, we have guys. We're going to trust them to make plays now.
There's two things I want to, and they're not really connected, but I'm going to try to get these thoughts out here and find a way to make this make sense to everybody. There's two parts of that if you can make plays, you're going to get on the field that I really adore. The first point of it, I'm going to talk about the Koby Howard redshirt bullshit they tried to pull last year, where Koby Howard very clearly could have helped Penn State's receiver room from the jump. And I get it. They paid $500,000 for Liam Clifford. You got to get him on the field. They paid a lot of money for Kyron Hudson,
I will stress.
Trevor Pena, and Devontae Ross.
I want to really quickly stress two things. One, that $500,000 thing for Liam Clifford that's been rumored, it hasn't been confirmed by anyone. In that, it's just something that's been out there plenty of times. Two, as far as I'm aware, Liam Clifford is no longer on Penn State's football team. I cannot say with 100% certainty.
You never know when another one might pop up. But even if you don't do everything perfectly, this is modern college football. Receivers help you win those big games. Actually, it's a pretty good tie-in now to my other point that I wanted to make. If you watched Indiana last year, the amount of times they trusted their receivers, and I get they had a first-round receiver in Cooper, I get they had really good pass catchers, but the amount of times the call was Fernando back shoulder, have a big wide receiver, let him go make a play. They did it against Ohio State. They did it against Miami. They did it when they absolutely destroyed Alabama. That's the kind of thing that wins you football games now. So to have a staff that believes in that fundamentally and also believes in maybe your special teams work isn't the best, but you can go catch 4 balls in a game, you should be on the field, I think is going to be of major benefit to the Penn State offense as a whole. Like, I get the desire from the previous staff to have it be how you do anything is how you do everything. We want to reward that with playing time. But when you had a receiver room that was that mediocre and you had a guy like Howard who clearly showed he could play with how he played down the stretch last year, I think it did a pretty big disservice to Drew Aller and everybody, around that offense the last couple of years. So I'm excited for the fundamental philosophical change that's going to come with Taylor Mauser and Matt Campbell. And having guys who played with Rocco Beck before is another humongous benefit. Like rattling off Solo and Eskelsen, and there's chances here for this unit to be a net positive every single week, as opposed to a net positive 45% of the games on your schedule, which hasn't been the case in quite a long time.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I go back to a quote that was given to Johnny McGonigal of Penn Live. We just mentioned the wide receiver room that Iowa State had last year. Brett Eskelsen, 30 receptions, 526 yards, 5 touchdowns. Chase Sowell, 32 receptions, 500 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not exactly numbers that light the world on fire, but you go back to 2024, their top 2 receivers, Jalen Noel, 80 receptions, 1,194 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Jaden Higgins, 87 receptions, 1,183 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I believe both of them were second-round draft picks. They're both in the NFL. They were both very good the year before that. And in speaking to my guy, Johnny McGonigal, Higgins and Noel gave a pair of quotes. Higgins on Taylor Mauser, coach uses the expression that it's a let your nuts hang offense. We're going to go out there and try to score points. He's not holding anything back. Noel added, it's a very fun system. And if you give him talent, you know what, even if he doesn't have talent, he's going to make things happen. They're talking about shots down the field and big plays and fearlessness and all these things that, Matt, we heard about Andy Kotelnicki's offense and Andy Kotelnicki's approach to calling an offense. And one thing that became pretty obvious, I think, as things went on, whether this is an Andy Kotelnicki thing, whether this is a James Franklin thing, whether this is the wide receiver talent that Penn State had thing, whether it's a Drew Aller thing, I don't know. But it became pretty obvious to me that the receivers became such a complementary piece to things that the big plays had to come as like a within the flow of the offense thing. It wasn't just go out there and make plays because you have this about you. They had running backs who could do that in Tyler Warren. They had a tight end who could very much do that, but it was harder for wide receivers. It feels to me, and again, all the caveats about how things felt last offseason or how things
Yep.
felt the offseason before that. All those caveats apply. It feels to me like Taylor Mauser is a little bit different than Andy Kotelnicki in that he wants the wide receivers, or he is going to empower the wide receivers to be these big play guys, be the guys who do the big plays, be the guys who are a showcased part of the offense.
And to get them those big plays, Bill, like it's not so reliant on if you're going to get a big play to a wide receiver, it's going to be because I schemed it open. It's going to be because we gave the guy a shot to make a play and he made a big play happen, which I think was really few and far between. Like I can think of a handful of times where, let's go back to 2024. Let's go back a couple of years where there were opportunities for Penn State's wide receivers to make big plays where Aller threw the ball up and said, go out there and get the football. And there's one specifically that comes back, and it is towards the end of the first half against Ohio State where Trey Wallace has a shot to make a play on the ball, can't reel it in. Igbinosun from Ohio State makes a great pick, changes that game on its head. Think back to the Notre Dame interception where Amari Evans is coming across the field, doesn't really fight for the football, and the ball gets picked off. Like, unless these guys were schemed open, I feel like the opportunity for big plays just weren't there. And I don't think that's a space Taylor Mauser is comfortable existing in, and not a place he will allow his offense to exist in, which is a massive, massive sign of confidence in his receivers. Like, even if he doesn't have 2 second-round picks like he did a couple years back, I still don't think that means he's going to change his philosophy very much, which is, I think, the sign of a coach who trusts his players a lot, and that's normally a pretty good coach to play for.
Yeah. And all of this is to say, and we'll now dive into the starters on Penn State's wide receiver room. It certainly seems like two guys who followed Matt Campbell and co. from Iowa State, Brett Eskildson and Chase Sowell. It seems a safe bet those two are going to be starting alongside noted guy that every Penn State fan would die for, despite the fact that in his career he has 7 receptions for 133 yards. Koby Howard. It seems like in those 3 guys, in 2 guys who, maybe there's a bit of a ceiling on how quote unquote talented they are, but they have some built-in chemistry with Rocco Beck. They know the offense. And then in Koby Howard, the guy who seems like he has the most talent of the bunch, there is a wide receiver room here that if you squint and if you want to believe in these guys, if you don't want to believe in these guys until you see it, again, totally fine. If you want to believe in these guys, it's not like that belief would be totally unfounded.
Also, Bill, you don't really need to squint to see these guys. This is a massive wide receiver room. I know I touched on it from the start, but Eskildson, 6'1", 198. Chase Sowell, 6'3", 203. Koby Howard, smallest guy who's not a walk-on in this room, I believe, at 5'11", 203 pounds, which puts him, I think that, Bill, that's probably akin to Parker Washington's playing days here when he was a junior. And if Koby Howard can play as big as Parker Washington played, that's a hell of a player to have as your quote-unquote small guy in the room. Of this group, Bill, I think Sowell is the one that intrigues me the most, partially because his story is fascinating. Bill, do you remember when Colorado hired Deion Sanders and told a bunch of college kids, I'm bringing my own luggage and it's Louis? Sowell was on that Colorado roster when that happened. Like, he was one of the guys who was not Louis, who could not get the opportunity to probably fairly stay at Colorado. So he transfers to ECU. To Matt Campbell's credit and to Taylor Mauser's credit and to that staff's credit, they always do a good job of finding tall receivers who are maybe a little bit undervalued. I think, Bill, both Higgins and Noel were transfers from either JUCO or smaller schools, which they went out there and they were able to find. So he comes with them to Iowa State and then sticks with them through Penn State. Like, that's a guy I want to root for. Like, it's never fun when a kid has to go to 4 colleges in 5 years. And I get the reason why Sowell had to, but that's a kid I'm really excited to watch because I think he's their most talented receiver. And I think Eskildson plays with a little bit of toughness to him. I think he's not afraid of backing down from a fight. And I think he also plays bigger than his 6'1" frame. And then, and again, I know Koby Howard only has 7 receptions in his career, but from everything we heard last year, he's a guy who should have had at least 4 times that number. both in terms of like production and snaps, which just were not available to him until Terry Smith took over. So yeah, Bill, it's a triumvirate at the top that I don't necessarily think has the highest ceiling in the world, but I'll be damned if this floor wasn't raised a good bit with this top three.
But my thing with this receiver room is that, like, I don't know if Brett Eskildson and Chase Soul are going to raise the ceiling of Penn State's wide receiver room. I think the fact that they are comfortable with Rocco Becht, the fact that they are comfortable in this offense, and the fact that, like, they're having these guys unlocks that back shoulder throw element of the offense that Penn State just like didn't have. Because, Matt, I don't know if you know about this. Here's a little thing that I've learned about the great game of football.
Back shoulder throws are awesome.
No. Actually, that's risky because if you try to throw a back shoulder throw, you might overthrow your receiver. And if you overthrow your wide receiver, there is a 0% chance that anything good can come from the play because it will probably fall incomplete or it'll go out of bounds. However, if you purposely underthrow your wide receiver, there is a chance that in trying to come back for the ball, they could draw a defensive pass interference. Obviously, it's all of it. You need to have the accurate throws, but you also need to have the overthrows, but also the underthrows. And in the underthrows, you obviously have the alignment with the quarterback and with the wide receiver and with the offensive coordinator. And if you haven't realized this by now, James Franklin talking about the purposeful underthrows last year turned me into the Joker. It was one of the most frustrating things that I could ever remember hearing out of a football coach. And I don't think that's going to happen because I think that's going to happen as much as I think there's going to be like more belief in the guys being able to make plays. So you have that element of the back shoulder throw in the offense. And that is just something that we've wanted forever. How many times did we watch Deshaun Hamilton line up in the slot, run that little seam route, and is dropped into a bucket for him? That is something that has been missing from Penn State's offense, and I think that is going to come back thanks to these two who, again, I don't think they're going to raise the ceiling. Their job in these two is to raise what the floor is of Penn State's wide receiver room, in large part because that's where the bar has been forever. And if they are able to just raise the floor and raise the bar for what Penn State's wide receiver room could be, I think that's going to be a good thing. I don't know if Brett Eskildson is going to be a Big Ten caliber athlete. I know that Chase Soul has had some issues with drops over the course of his career. Those are issues, and those are reasons why I do not think they are going to raise the ceiling or it's going to be hard for them to raise the ceiling too terribly much unless Eskildson has a really big summer in the weight room and Soul gets better at, reeling in passes and doesn't struggle with drops as much as he did. But they are guys who are good football players, and they are guys who know Rocco Becht, and they are guys who know Taylor Mauser. And when you put them with a guy in Koby Howard, who I think if those two raise the floor, Koby could be the guy who raises the ceiling a little bit in this wide receiver room. All of a sudden, you have a trio of guys that you can build around, that you can have be the foundation of this room. And in addition to a tight end room that we're going to talk about next week, there are pieces here that could be part of a good passing game. And I don't think any one of us cares if Penn State is going to have, two guys like Iowa State had in 2024 in Noel and Higgins. We just want on 3rd down and 8, if Penn State needs to throw the football, we have faith that a guy is going to be able to do something. And I think this trio of guys has it in them to be able to do something in those situations.
Also on the trio point, Bill, like I really don't think there's going to be a ton of sets where all three of these guys are on the field at the same time, because we'll talk about it next week. I think we're going to see a ton of 12 personnel. I think we're going to see a decent amount of 13 personnel. We talked about it last week with the running backs and how they're planning on using those guys. I think we're going to see a lot of 2-back sets. So being able to kind of rotate these 3 guys out with the 2 best guys for specific situations on the field, I think is a very nice card that Taylor Mauser then becomes able to play. Again, you combine that with Chase Solo 6'3" size with Ben Brommer 6'7" size and Rapp's 6'5". All of a sudden, 3rd and 8, you've got options to go jumbo and throw it out wide and give your big receivers, big pass catchers, a chance to just moss a couple people. Or, let's say it's 2nd and 4, and all of a sudden crossing routes where Raskelson and Koby kind of set up picks for each other. You can hit one of the two and they can turn it upfield. I think that Mauser and co are going to have a very, very fun time trying to figure out who works best in each situation. And that is a luxury that Penn State hasn't really had, because I feel like for a long time, Bill, it's been this guy needs to be on the field every single time because this is the only guy we trust. That was Trey. That was Jahan.
Right.
That was Washington. That was Keandre. I don't feel like they have that anymore. And again, the more options you have, the better. And these 3 guys, and the depth piece we'll talk about in a little bit, give you a couple of nice options.
It was always about you have to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Liam Clifford became the avatar for this a little bit unfairly, because it's not, this is like Paul George with the 76ers, Matt. It's not Paul George's fault that Daryl Morey wanted to give him $50 million a year. And it's not Paul George's fault that he went, oh God, yeah, give me $50 million a year. It's not Liam Clifford's fault that James Franklin went, Liam, how I want my program to be run. You are someone who does all the right things. You are about all the stuff I want the program to be about. I want to give you X amount of dollars. And then James Franklin spends the offseason talking about Liam does everything right. Liam does everything right. Liam is this way. That's not Liam Clifford's fault. He became the avatar for this. Mm-hmm. But I do think there is something to, we'll see how Matt Cable handles this. Maybe we get to the season and Koby Howard doesn't, quote unquote, do all the right things, or Koby doesn't practice well enough, doesn't earn the right to get on the field. Maybe that is the case with him. But for right now, I don't think there is going to be that sense of, you have to do everything right every step of the way, in the classroom, in practice, here, and you have to earn the right to get on the field. And when you get on the field, you have to do everything right. And in doing everything right on the field, even if it doesn't come off, we at least have some level of knowledge of what you're going to do. And in being as risk averse as we want to be, I don't think that is necessarily going to be the case, or I don't know that's going to be the case. I just think that I just hope it's not as rigid as it was. I want the 3 guys out there who are going to be the best football players, who raise the ceiling the most. And yeah, if Koby Howard on an outside zone run doesn't sustain his block long enough, and as a result, it reduces the likelihood of an explosive play, yeah, that might be annoying. Also, I'm good with it, because when it's time to drop back and throw the football, I trust him more than I trust Kyron Hudson, more than I trust Liam Clifford, whatever. Not even necessarily trust. I just believe in his ability to do something and raise the ceiling in a way that those guys can't. And if this offense is truly going to be, we're going to let your nuts hang, we're going to go for big plays, we're going to this and this and this, having these 3 guys is a really, really good thing to be built around. And then you bring everybody else on. And that's where we get into the depth options in this room. And I will be honest, Matt, I get a little bit of agita thinking about it, because
there's not much proven production here at all, brother.
not that much proven production. Zay Robinson caught 1 ball for 0 yards last year. That is, I believe, it among the guys who followed them from Iowa State. Amarian Jackson is a recruit. He was a recruit who decided to flip. Karan Brookings redshirted last year. Lyric Samuel and Peter Gonzalez, nothing there. Keith Jones Jr., transfer from Grambling, 31 receptions, 438 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's making a really, really big step up in competition.
I got thoughts on him. I'm excited to talk about him in a little bit.
Here's my thing with this room, with the depth guys in this room. Peter Gonzalez, 6'2", 211. Lyric Samuel, 6'4", 183. Karan Brookings, 6'5", 205. Keith Jones, 6'4", 197. Zay Robinson, 5'11", 186. Amarian Jackson, 6'2", 192. It's a big room. It is guys who if they're going to do that back shoulder throw up a 50-50 ball, trust the guy to do it, except for, maybe instead of Zay Robinson, who's probably more of the slot guy. There's stuff here to be optimistic about, but this room is going to be a lot of development, a lot of hoping for the best, and a lot of, at least as they're getting settled, you really need your top 2 or 3 guys to be able to carry you for a bit.
Which might be fine. Like, while things work itself out throughout the non-con, that might be fine. I talked about him briefly there, Bill. Keith Jones Jr. is incredibly fascinating to me, simply because I think so highly of Taylor Mauser and Matt Campbell's ability to scout under-recruited or unheralded big receivers and then develop them into something that can be a massive threat on the football field. If people are bored and they just want to watch, maybe I think one of the most absurd college highlight tapes of all time, Bill, do you know what Iowa State receiver I'm going to tell people to watch? Give a guess.
Who is that?
Hakeem Butler. If you remember him at Iowa State, like 6'5", huge, massive. The highlight tape of him at Iowa State is unbelievable. And that's a guy who was an unheralded recruit. You had to have been to be going to Iowa State in like that 2014 to 2016 era. And then you think about a guy like Higgins and Noel. Bill, check me on that. Was it Higgins or Noel? Was it JUCO or I forget what it was off the top of my head, but still similar to Keith Jones Jr. at Grambling State. They went out there and they found guys who were in either the high school or college ranks who they thought, hey, there's something here that we could turn into what ended up being like a 2nd-round pick. So that's something that's a proven track record. And I know Jones Jr. was hurt for all of spring pretty much. There has not been very much hype about him at all, or very much, news to report on him at all. But the track record there makes him, I think, perhaps the most intriguing guy. Former basketball player like Trey Wallace was. And I do think Trey did a lot of things really well, but I think with a little bit more consistent coaching, I think Jones Jr. is set up to find success maybe easier than Trey was. And then, whatever else they get out of everybody else is kind of just, I don't want to say gravy, but how can you really project what Zay Robinson is going to give you? Lyric Samo and Peter Gonzalez. I don't really know how you can sit here and say any of those guys have a leg up on each other. So it's really just going to be best man wins for them to go out there and get that 4th wide receiver spot, which again, Bill, maybe is option number 9 in this offense, given what the tight ends and running backs do. So yes, depth is of a concern, but it's not the biggest concern in the world for me personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys, and what I find really interesting here is just how similar this is to the wide receiver room of the last couple of years for Penn State, in terms of you're coming into the season and it's very much about your top guys. God knows what your depth guys are going to end up doing, because don't have a ton of production, don't know how much trust and faith you should put into dudes. You replace the name Zay Robinson with Tysier Denmark, or you replace the name, I'm just going through old rosters here. You replace the name Karan Brookings with Anthony Ivy. I know they were different football players. You replace the name Peter Gonzalez with Peter Gonzalez. And we're in a very similar situation depth-wise to where we have been in Penn State's wide receiver room. So it's not that I want to say this is good or this is bad or this is whatever. This is just you use the word gravy. Yeah, it's this is all kind of gravy. This is all, if you get anything out of any of these guys, that is great. You really need your top guys to be healthy, and maybe you have some guys grow up a little bit over the course of the year. Maybe Keith Jones Jr. is able to take a really big step up. Amari and Jackson Keith Jones Jr. point. A lot of that is projection, and I have it pulled up right here. Hakeem Butler, Bill, he was a 2-star prospect
the number 2,308 player in his class back then, and Matt Campbell and company found him. And they turned him into an NFL draft pick. And I know he didn't last long in the league, but still, we're talking college production now. Jaden Higgins, Bill, started his career at Eastern Kentucky.
Yes.
Matt Campbell found that guy. Jalen Noel, the number 837 player, the number 124 wide receiver, and the 13th ranked player in Missouri in his class. That's a track record of knowing what they want and finding a guy. And I don't want to hype up a guy who we've heard basically nothing about, Bill. But again, the track record is the track record of Campbell and Mauser is the very, very intriguing through line here that has me curious about what he could be.
Yeah, and one thing I also want to mention here, Amarian Jackson, a quote from Matt Campbell during the during spring ball. I don't know if there's a true freshman that's had a bigger spring than what he has. He came from a great high school program and obviously was committed to us at Iowa State. And as the transition happened, you just thought he was a really dynamic athlete. Certainly on track that he'll push to play as a true freshman. Been impressive how he's approached it, his mannerisms, knows what to do. Plays really fast for a young football player. Plays really confident. Like
if there was 192 on Amarian Jackson as a true freshman.
Yeah. And he's someone who could potentially rotate with Sowell, potentially rotate with Eskilsson as their kind of their more outside guys. We'll see. Like there's a lot of waiting and seeing with the wide receiver room at the very top with the depth guys. And Matt, as we go into the ranking among Penn State's offensive units, as a reminder, I had quarterbacks at 3, running backs at 4. You had running backs at 3, quarterbacks at 5. I can guess where you're going to put wide receivers. Where are you going to put them?
I'm going to put them at number 4, Bill. I have them at number 4 simply because I like the consistent production of what they were able to show. It's nothing that's going to revolutionize the wheel, but I do think that there are 2 guys who raise the floor, a guy in Koby Howard who can, I think, really be something special. And then you surround them with young guys who were recruited by a staff who I've made it very clear on this podcast I trust their evaluation on receivers on. And I think there's something to work with here. So I have them slotted in at the 4 spot for me. I'm going to guess I know where you have these guys slotted.
I have them at 5. It's just a lot of waiting and seeing for me. It's needing to wait and see. There's just so little proof of concept here, right?
Really
like
is.
We need to see Brett Eskilsson, if he could step up, and Chase Sowell, how they take the next step up into the big time. I'm confident they could do it. We just have to see how they do it. We have to see how Koby Howard takes a step up in what happens as he takes on more responsibility, and can he become the guy that Penn State fans want him to be? We have to see all those guys who are more the depth side of things, whether they were a transfer portal addition, whether they followed from Iowa State, whether they're guys who stayed on the roster, whatever they end up doing. Like it's just all stuff we have to see. And there is so little proof of concept that it's very difficult for me to be able to say with any confidence, I trust that. So I have them at 5. I think they're going to be okay. It's funny because we're coming off of a year where 2 years ago, Trey Wallace and Amari Evans, guys Penn State recruited, guys Penn State developed. Julian Fleming came in to potentially round the room out. Just didn't happen. Last year, they got a pair of P5, Power 4 transfers in Trevor Pena and in Kyron Hudson. Hudson, he was a proven battle test guy, just couldn't cut. He, wasn't a right fit at Penn State. Pena, Penn State didn't use him correctly until after James Franklin was fired, and he showed that he could be a pretty good football player. And then in a Devontae Ross, a guy who ended up getting hurt, he made the transfer up. I think he did okay considering he was Penn State's touchdown leader in the receiver room. I thought he did okay considering he missed the spring with an injury and had to get up to speed. But we're now kind of going down this third route of putting together a wide receiver room, which is, even if we're admitting that it's mostly guys who follow the coach, this is a built through the portal wide receiver room for Penn State. And I'm very interested in seeing what that looks like. And if a guy like Koby Howard, like Lyric Samuel, like Peter Gonzalez, what they do with a different approach to Penn State's offense. Like, I could see them being a nice unit. I could see them being a pretty good unit. It's just at this point on June 14th, we're doing this. I don't know if I could put enough faith in them to make that happen yet.
And I probably, Bill, October maybe is the absolute earliest I'm going to be able to feel like I have faith in this thing. So, I mean, it's not, these aren't questions that are going to find answers anytime soon.
Well, Matt, it's time for the part of the pod that I hate the most because it really makes me feel like I don't know ball.
Well, Bill,
go ahead.
It's time to see if you know ball. It is time. The NBA season might be over. Congratulations to all the Knicks fans out there. And congratulations to Penn State fan Josh Hart mainly. But Bill, it is time to play Who He Play For, inspired by Inside the NBA's game of the same name. For those who have not listened to previous episodes, transfer portal, pretty big thing. A lot of guys used to play for Penn State and now no longer do that. So this is a game where I share a player who used to play for Penn State, and Bill has to guess who he played for. So, Bill, I think I have all the receivers. I may have missed a couple of them, but I think I got most of them. And let's start off with a guy you were fond on as a recruit. Very highly recruited in the class of 2022 from Ohio. Bill, Caden Saunders, who he played for.
I know he's in the MAC, right?
He is. Well, I'm not telling you anything, but he's not in the MAC.
Oh, he's not in the MAC? Damn it.
He's not in the MAC.
I know they have a couple of guys who are in the MAC. I thought Caden might have been one of them.
Actually, Bill, I don't think any receivers are in the MAC.
Really?
Not to my knowledge.
They didn't have a guy go to Akron?
I mean, you're thinking of Mekhi Flowers a couple years back, but he's a safety. So, spoiler alert for safety who he played for.
Yeah, there we go. I will get. I know it's in the MAC. Whatever. I'll guess Northern Illinois. But
Bill, if you just flip that direction, Bill, and go to Mississippi, you will go to Southern Mississippi, where Caden Saunders now plays. All right, Bill, 0 for 1. In the same recruiting class, I believe from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or maybe the broader Lancaster area. Bill, Anthony Ivy, who he played for.
Oh, God.
You're never Bill, you could probably guess there's 137 FBS teams. You could probably guess 135 of them, and the other two being Penn State, and then the last one be the team this guy plays for.
New Mexico.
That's very close. Same conference, Bill. He plays for the San Jose State Spartans, excuse me. So he is out there in the Mountain West with, I believe, former Navy head coach Ken Niumatalolo. So that's fun. Bill, a Virginia native. Transferred out 2 cycles ago, but is still in college football. Bill, Tyler Johnson, who he played for.
Is he at East Carolina?
He is at East Carolina, Bill. Well done. That is a
I
impressive
knew there was
memory
someone
on
at East Carolina. I couldn't remember who it was. I knew it was someone.
This one's really tough, Bill. It is an FCS school, but if you're going to take a shot at it, you can go for it. Bill, Josiah Brown, who he played for.
Oh, God.
He's from New York. I'll say that.
Syracuse?
Not Syracuse, FCS school. He plays for Long Island University.
Long Island, okay.
Who I believe played Florida a couple years back or last year.
Did you say in telling me that he went to an FCS school?
I did.
Okay, because I'm sorry. I'm like distracted by the World Cup. I apologize.
All right, Bill. Let's stick around this class era. Bill, Tysier Denmark, one of the 2 guys on this list with a Penn State touchdown in his career. Bill, Tysier Denmark, who he played for.
Is he at South Carolina?
Denmark? Denmark is not at South Carolina. You're close. There's a familiar connection between South Carolina and where he currently plays.
Exit light, enter night. We're off to Never Neverland, Virginia Tech.
He followed James Franklin down there to Virginia Tech.
May I have a moment?
Go ahead.
That one is wild.
That one is crazy to me.
2 years of we're going to need Tysier. Tysier's a great player. We're going to this. Tysier, you're going to play. You're going to be important to us. To not get that you know what? Good for him.
Listen, everybody's on their own journey. Bill, where is Jeff Exeter's journey taking him?
Maryland.
Close. He is also Enter Sandman. He also went to Virginia Tech.
Really? Huh.
Got two
Good
guys
for
down
him.
there with him. All right, Bill, one more. Freshman last year. Don't believe he ever saw the field. Matt Outen, who he played for.
Did he also go to Virginia Tech?
It is not, Bill, but you did say the school earlier. He
South
is
Carolina.
at Syracuse. He is at Syracuse.
That's right. Okay.
So, all right, Bill, you get one, and the one you got was a guy who wasn't even on Penn State's roster last year. It was on the roster 2 years ago. So not the best showing I've ever seen, but I definitely respect the effort. This was a tough one. This was I'm fairly confident this was everybody. I could not find any information on Carmelo Taylor. His 24/7 page does show offers last year coming out of JUCO, but I was not able to find him popping up anywhere. And you never know if John Dunmore is still out there playing college football somewhere. So
it
that's all I could find.
Last year, I don't know if he further transferred, but last year it appears Carmelo Taylor was at Lackawanna.
Yep, he was at
is he not still at Lackawanna? Or
Lackawanna has not yet published a 2026 roster, so I could not confirm that.
Okay, it probably a safe bet that he is at Lackawanna, but who knows? Can you run through the list of schools that guys went to?
Yes, again, Southern Miss, San Jose State, ECU, Long Island University, 2 for Virginia Tech, Syracuse.
Boy, and one of the Virginia Tech ones and the Syracuse one were both true freshmen last year.
Correct.
And then the third Virginia Tech one was guys. This is a really interesting the game this time was particularly interesting to me for the simple reason, Matt, that it's like a big time water finds its level game. Not meant to like be a knock on any of those guys, but like so much of Penn State's receiver room during the James Franklin era, basically from the moment Parker Washington moved on, has been like trying to see if anyone in here can be, a star wide receiver for Penn State, or just a guy
really since Lonnie White opted to go play baseball.
Trying to give them consistent production. And like, you look through who the guys have been in recent years. 2023, Keandre Lambert-Smith ends up transferring to Auburn. And then it's like Dante Cephas, Omari Evans, bit of a one-trick pony. Malik McLean was, he transferred to Arizona State, was it?
Yeah, and he's signed somewhere. He's on some NFL roster, at least through camp. So good for him, chasing his dreams.
But as we're looking through the guys, we're like, okay, they might have one or two guys. Who else do they have? It turns out the answer to who else do they have is just like guys who I don't know if they could do it at this level. So like,
I mean, also I'm looking through the recruiting like back then. I know they signed a pretty good sized class for 2025, but like 2024 or 2023, was just Carmelo Taylor. Like that was it. I'm looking at 2024 now. There really isn't receiver wise anybody on here. Josiah Brown and Peter Gonzalez and Tyseer. And like, at that point it's year 3 for all those guys. Like it was, I think, way more toxic, and I knew it was toxic, but it might've been way worse than even I remember.
Yeah. It goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this podcast, Matt, which is that like, there is just the change in head coach. And, I'm not sitting here trying to say that like James Franklin is personally responsible for the struggles of Penn State's wide receiver room. Like it's, a million things go into this. Wide receiver, maybe quarterback, but wide receiver more than any other position really benefited from, we're just throwing everything away. We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're starting brand new. And this is what brand new looks like. And, hopefully when we're talking about the wide receiver room in October, we're talking about a room where like, yeah, you know what? Good stuff here. There is some stuff here that we can.
There's some buds here.
Yeah. So fingers crossed. Matt, any final things you want to say before I send the people off into their week?
No. Hopefully we'll get kick times this week. Fingers crossed we get something figured out, like some official announcements. We're pretty rapidly coming up on the switch to Adidas, so I'm excited to see what that merch looks like. We got some really nice comments on YouTube last episode, so thank you. If you're not subscribed on YouTube yet, be sure to head over to YouTube. I'll let you add that in your spiel. Tight ends should be interesting to talk about. And then I'm heading to Georgia next week for a trip with a bunch of other Penn Staters. So I'm very excited to go see a bunch of my buddies and have a good time in Savannah, going fishing. Should be a great time. So we're going to bank the tight end podcast a little bit early in the week. So excited about it.
So just a warning to anyone, if between us starting the tight end podcast and it publishing, something horrible happens in Penn State's tight ends room, it's not our fault that it sounds like we don't know that happened. But yes, thank you everyone for listening to the Stitcher of Borderlines Roar. As always, your podcast platform of choice, whatever it is, head on over there, subscribe to us, leave us a 5-star review. Really helps if we're able to get the word out a little bit more. As Matt mentioned, we're starting to put these back up on YouTube. Head over to YouTube, leave some comments there, subscribe, like videos, whatever you got to do to help us over on YouTube, or whatever you want to do. If you don't want to help us, that's fine by me. It's all good.
Live your dream.
Make sure you follow,
live your
dream. Follow us on Twitter and on Blue Sky. And thank you, as always, for listening to the Stitcher of Organized Roar. For my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
Christian Pulisic, shout out Central Pennsylvania excellence on the World Cup stage.